Hi everyone, I'm Wendy and today I'm eating a starch solution diet. Last month I did an Eating Like the Esselstyns video and I got a request to eat like the McDougalls next. So I grabbed a couple of recipes off of the McDougall website to try. If you're not familiar with Dr. McDougall and the starch solution, stick around and I'll explain it a little bit later. But first, let's jump right into what I had for breakfast. As the name implies, the starch solution puts an emphasis on starches. So for my breakfast, my starch is oats. Here I have whole oat groats. I usually cook about 2 cups with about 3.5 to 4 cups of water. I also like to add in a bag of riced cauliflower. Then I cook that in my Instant Pot at high pressure for 20 minutes and let it do a natural pressure release. After it's done cooking, I add a can of pumpkin puree and either some cinnamon or pumpkin pie spice, whatever I have on hand. This batch lasts me about 4 or 5 days, and every day I reheat it. Most of the time I eat it with blueberries, but occasionally I'll use other fruit. Then I'm sprinkling on some ground flaxseed, and as usual, I'm also having a smoothie along with it. Smoothies are not specifically part of the McDougall plan. In fact, for those following Dr. McDougall's maximum weight loss plan, smoothies generally would not be recommended because they're liquid calories which can easily be overconsumed. I tend to have the opposite problem where I need to be able to get more calories in, so I like to have a smoothie most days. This smoothie is full of vegetables, so even though it's liquid calories, it's still very calorie dilute. I started by adding some spinach to my blender, and the rest of the veggies I had already prepped ahead to make my morning prep go quickly. It's got celery, bell pepper, onion, garlic, tomato, and cucumber. To that, I also add a couple pieces of walnut, a splash of lemon juice, and a handful of frozen apple pieces. Then I blend it with water. This is what I like to call my salad smoothie. Sometimes I change up the veggies a little bit, depending on what's in the fridge, but this mix has pretty much been my go-to for the last couple of months. After breakfast, I need to get to work. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I work from home. And usually I like to have all of my food prepped and cooked already so I don't have to waste any of my lunchtime cooking. But today, I am actually going to do a little bit of cooking during my lunch break. I did prep all of the ingredients last night though, so this meal will only take about 20 minutes to prepare, leaving me plenty of time to eat before I have to get back to work. This recipe is by Mary McDougall and it's called Costa Rican Potatoes and Beans. I'll include the link to this recipe in the details below the video. It starts with a chopped onion, some garlic, and a jalapeno, which, as I mentioned, I chopped up last night. I'll saute that for a couple of minutes, then the recipe calls for fresh tomatoes and cilantro. I'm one of those unfortunate people who got that cilantro gene. Usually people say it makes it taste like soap, but I would describe it as more of a metallic taste. In any case, I've decided to use parsley instead. The recipe also calls for boiling some fresh spinach, but I'm taking a shortcut today and simply adding frozen spinach. After that cooks down a bit, you add in black beans and some pre-cooked potatoes and continue cooking until it's heated through. I'm going to be eating this along with brown rice. This month, I'm doing a 30-day Eat More Plants challenge. I'll put a link here to last week's video where I explain the challenge and where you can download the 30-day calendar if you want to join in. But it's very simple. You just pick one way to add more plant-based foods to your diet for 30 days. Or you can do any kind of 30-day diet and lifestyle reset that you want. Lately, I've been eating a bit more bread and pasta than usual, and I've been neglecting whole intact grains. So my personal challenge was to add an extra serving of whole grains every day, and I've been trying to batch prep to make sure I always have them ready to go. I also like to eat a diversity of different kinds of grains, so I'll usually keep enough for a couple days in the fridge and put the rest in individual serving sizes that I can freeze for later. Today, I'm eating some of that brown rice and topping it with the potato and bean recipe I just made. The other day, I also mixed up some cabbage and onions with a basic vinaigrette to make an easy coleslaw, and I decided to have those leftovers with my lunch. I'm topping the cabbage with some hemp seeds, and then Dr. McDougall is all about making sure you like the taste of your food so that you'll eat more of the good stuff. So his plan recommends adding whatever condiments you like, and this recipe in particular recommends adding some hot sauce. This recipe uses really simple flavors and ingredients, but it was still very tasty and filling. After that meal, I also grabbed a couple of clementines before I headed back to work. And now let me explain a little bit more about the starch solution for those of you who may not be familiar. Dr. McDougall wrote a book called The Starch Solution, and many people also use that term to describe a McDougall-style diet, which is a diet centered around whole starches. This includes any and all kinds of whole grains, beans, legumes, and starchy vegetables like potatoes, sweet potatoes, and squash. Starches make up the bulk of calories, and the rest of the diet consists mainly of non-starchy veggies and fruit. The diet eliminates animal products and oils, and especially when seeking weight loss, even whole food fats like nuts, seeds, and avocados are generally limited. If weight loss is not a goal, these foods can be included in the diet in small amounts, and in fact are included in many McDougall recipes. But overall, it's a low-fat, whole food plant-based diet. There are many different variations on the McDougall diet. Some people do a 50-50 plate, where your plate is visually half full of starches and half full of non-starchy vegetables. Then there's the Mary's Mini, which is another version where you eat a very simplified version of the McDougall diet. This is generally used as another way to kickstart weight loss. I did a couple videos where I demonstrated how one might follow a Mary's Mini if you want to check those out. But the key takeaway of any version of a McDougall diet is to make sure you're eating plenty of those whole grains, beans, and starchy vegetables to ensure that you feel satiated and energized, while adding non-starchy veggies and fruit for extra flavor and nutrition. As I mentioned earlier, using condiments and even sprinkling a little salt or sugar onto your food is okay on this eating plan. Basically, it's the idea of adding a little salt or sugar to help the medicine go down. And in this case, that medicine is whole plant foods. So far today, I've definitely eaten plenty of starches, starting with my oatmeal for breakfast and the potatoes, beans, and rice with lunch. This is very similar to my normal diet, and I love this style of diet because I like to eat a lot. And when you're mostly eating low-calorie plant foods, you can eat quite a lot of food. Now, before I move on to my dinner, this is usually the part of the video where I do some kind of exercise. But today I took it pretty easy and didn't do any structured workout. Normally, I also do yoga when I wake up, but I actually skipped that today because I was running short on time this morning. I did still get a quick walk in before breakfast. And it's that time of year here in Missouri where the weather is quite unpredictable. Just in the last week alone, we've been everywhere between 15 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. This morning was on the chillier end, but had a really nice sunrise. And instead of a full workout this afternoon, I'm just doing one exercise to keep up with my hang time. In the month of February, Rip Esselstyn did a Hanging with Rip challenge, inspiring people to hang from a pull-up bar for 2 minutes a day. I've managed to keep up with that about 5 days a week through the month of February and March. In the last week or so, I've progressed to doing a few sets of shoulder shrugs instead of just hanging. I'm hoping to keep up with this habit so I can work back up to doing pull-ups. As I mentioned before, over the last year, I dealt with an elbow injury and lost a lot of strength. So I'm trying to find the balance between building up my strength, but doing it slowly so I don't re-injure myself. Today, I also started doing some negative chin-ups. Negatives are simply where you start from a bent arm chin-up or pull-up position and slowly lower yourself down. This was my first day attempting this, and I think my elbow held up pretty well, but I don't want to push it. And after that, I made one more McDougall recipe. This one was written by Kathy Fisher, and it's also on the McDougall website, so I'll put that link in the details below the video. This one is called Quinoa Curry Bowl, and it starts with some quinoa, curry powder, and granulated onion going into a pot with some water. I'll bring that up to a boil and let it simmer until it's fully cooked. While that's cooking, I've got a bag of frozen stir-fry veggies going into a skillet to defrost. Once those are heated through, you add some fresh garlic and ginger, some more curry powder, and finally mix it with some tahini. And this wasn't part of the recipe, but I also added a can of chickpeas for even more starchy goodness. Finally, once everything is cooked, you combine it all together, and this is served with a little bit of avocado. I really enjoyed this meal, and it was another really simple recipe. The tahini made it kind of creamy, and curry powder is one of my favorite ways to flavor anything up. I hope you enjoyed this full day of eating video. Let me know in the comments if you have requests for future videos. And don't forget, if you'd like to join along in my 30-day Eat More Plants challenge, you can start anytime. Check below the video for all the details. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.